Hello everyone and welcome to my channel RPG Retro Reviews. I'm Captain Courageous and I review old school role-playing games, reveal fascinating trivia about those games, and make suggestions about how you might use them in your own games. This week I'm taking a nostalgic look back at the 1982 release of the superhero role-playing game Villains and Vigilantes, one of the first RPGs to tackle role-playing as superheroes. The game was written by Jack Herman and Jeff D. Jeff D is of course best known among the OSR crowd as a prolific Dungeons & Dragons artist featured in many of TSR's original Dungeons & Dragons publications. There's a lot I'm going to cover in this one, so let's get started. Villains and Vigilantes, or V&V, is most definitely a product of its time. Originally published in 1979, the vastly improved second edition was released by Fantasy Games Unlimited in 1982. Technically not the first superhero RPG, that distinction goes to the nominal Superhero 2044. V&V was the first RPG to attempt to simulate superhero action as it is portrayed in the comics, and in this respect it accomplishes this task amazingly well. Initially well received, the game would later be outshined by the Champions RPG, and complications with the publisher Scott Pizar and Fantasy Games Unlimited would further diminish the game's popularity, but more on that later. First, let's talk about the game itself. Villains and Vigilantes' D&D inspired roots are right in the title. At a time when Dungeons & Dragons ruled and RPGs had to have matching consonants and an ampersand connecting them, Tunnels and Trolls, Villains and Vigilantes also shared some minor system similarities as well. Like D&D, it used polyhedral dice, and the 5 stats, strength, endurance, agility, intelligence, and charisma, were all based on a 3 to 18 range, with 3 being poor and 18 being high, as well as character improvement being based on leveling. Other than those similarities, V&V is a very unique game with an interesting approach to the genre. Probably the first thing most veterans of the game mention about V&V is that you do not create a completely unique alter ego for yourself like most other games. No, in this RPG, you play yourself, endowed with superpowers. Basically, the Game Master, or GM, rates what they know about you in each of the 5 stats, and then you roll randomly for your superpowers. I remember doing this with my friends back in the day, and it was a lot of fun, though in later campaign iterations we simply used the alternative character creation for NPC rules and rolled up unique characters from scratch. To me, one of the more charming aspects of the game is its lack of overcodification. Champions would come along in 1981 and codify everything with its unique point-buy system and wargame-like precision game mechanics. But Villains and Vigilantes leaves many things open-ended for interpretation, so the players and Game Master can work out the specifics of certain powers for themselves. This can lead to some really interesting and unique characters. This aesthetic very much duplicates the old-style play from D&D. You roll your stats and see what you got. You rolled a 16 in dexterity? Oh, you've got a thief. In V&V, there are 5 tables: powers, devices, magic psionic items, skills, and magic psionic powers. You roll 1d6 plus 2 to see how many powers you have, then roll percentiles on the tables, choosing what table to roll on based on what you'd like to create. If you want a martial artist, roll on the skills table. If you want an Iron Man style character, roll on the devices table, and so on. Of course, you can mix it up. After rolling all your powers, you choose one to get rid of, preferably one that doesn't fit, and that you can come up with a reasonable explanation as to how these powers do fit together, and then roll for a weakness. Thus, in addition to creating very unique characters, it also makes character creation amazingly fast. Of course, this also is much of the fun, taking the random combination of powers and coming up with a story as to how you acquire them. When you look at the villain splat books, it definitely appears that the game designers employed this method in the creation of many of the included characters. V&V also employs some interesting mathematical formulas during character creation and even during play, so I highly suggest you have a calculator handy. For example, your 4 physical attributes each have hit point modifiers listed on their respective charts. To calculate your character's hit points, you multiply each of the modifiers together times your basic hits. Your basic hits is simply your weight divided by 50, rounded up. So if your character weighs 232 pounds, they have 5 basic hits. This formula is amazingly functional. To determine the amount of damage taken from a fall, multiply the number of inches fallen times the square root of the character's basic hits. There's a rule of thumb PDF that gives you a handy-dandy breakdown of the basic hits square roots up to 2,000-pound characters. The other formula that is a bit complex is the calculation for your character's carrying capacity. You take your strength score divided by 10 cubed, add your endurance score divided by 10, and multiply that times your weight divided by 2. Once you have your carrying capacity calculated, there's a handy chart to determine your character's basic hand-to-hand damage. There are a few other formulas in the game that require a bit of mathematical acrobatics, such as determining how far your character gets knocked back from a punch, the amount of damage taken minus your character's basic hits, but repetition generally allows the game master to employ such things quickly in actual play. Combat is conducted in 15-second rounds, and the initiative sequence is determined by adding the roll of a d10 to your agility score. Characters with high agility will act twice or more in a combat round. The character with the highest initiative roll determines the number of phases for the round. You act in increments of 15. Thus, if your initiative roll is 36, you'll act on phase 36, 21, and 6. Your character's movement is divided up among your different phases, however you like. This initiative chart from the still active V&V website is very handy, can help the GM organize the round very quickly. Hit determination is resolved through the rolling of a d20, though in V&V, low is better. As a longtime D&D player, this inversion can be a bit jarring initially, but is overcome by the end of the first game session. The basic to hit number is determined by comparing character levels to determine the experience modification, and then comparing the attack employed versus the defense used. Damage is removed from a character's hit points. Characters also have a power score, which is simply the strength, endurance, and agility scores added together. This represents the character's bioenergy and is used to power the character's special abilities, and can also be used to absorb damage taken. A character with no hit points or power points is dead. The powers list is pretty robust and flexible, and you really can come up with just about any character you've seen in the comics using it, and without all the medical gymnastics you have to do in Champions. Though since everything is not codified, it is possible for a newbie GM to allow for a concept that might be too overpowered. V&V's combat scale is 1 inch equals 5 feet, allowing for the employment of tokens on the tabletop to help visualize play. One of the things I absolutely love about V&V is the use of counters to represent the heroes, villains, bystanders, police, reporters, and so on. V&V was very good about including full color counter sheets in its published modules, and of course drawing up your own character's unique counter was part of the fun. Movement values and power ranges are all expressed in inches, where 1 inch equals 5 feet, so using the counters at the tabletop is very easy and inexpensive to do. The rules booklet is only 47 pages long and includes all the rules you need to play, though the font is a bit tiny. It was available as a standalone product or came in the box set, which included polyhedral dice, a somewhat flimsy black and white GM screen, and the very excellent adventure module Crisis at Crusader Citadel. As the included module in the box set, Crisis at Crusader Citadel parallels Keep on the Borderlands for D&D as probably the most played V&V module. The module is relatively short and can be played out in about 2, maybe 3 game sessions, and details the Crusaders' headquarters, the Citadel, its artificially intelligent computer teacher, and it introduces the 6 superpowered heroes, the Crusaders, composed of Manta Man, Evergreen, Enforcer, Dreamweaver, Blizzard, and Laserfire. Full statistical write-ups and backgrounds are provided for each hero. The module also details a complete supervillain group of 12 infamous baddies called the Crushers. The Crushers are composed of the artificially intelligent android the Mocker, the Hornet, the Shocker, the Mace, Stormlord, Marionette, a mind-controlling little person, the Shrew, the Bull, the Vulture, Temper, the Armored-Powered Fist, and Mercury Mercenary. The player characters play new heroes interested in becoming part of the Crusaders' superhero team, and it's their attempts to join this respected group of vigilantes that begins the story. An excellent teaching module, a complete superhero's headquarters is detailed so that the GM can use as is or use it as a template for something original. The V&V Game Master section in the rules detail exactly how one might go about doing this. The GM sections of the rules detail a few laws and punishments, how to create a V&V campaign with organizations detailed such as Chess, the central headquarters of espionage for the Secret Service, that the prospective heroes might work for as superpowered secret agents. Also detailed is the criminal organization known as Intercrime. 2 supplements, Most Wanted 1 and 3, Supervillain Splat books included counter sets of agents for these 2 organizations. In addition to Crisis at Crusader Citadel, other classic adventures for V&V include Dawn of DNA, Battle Above the Earth, Death Duel with the Destroyers, and the Island of Dr. Apocalypse, and many, many more. There are quite a few adventure modules for this game. Some classic V&V supplements include Most Wanted Volumes 1 and 3. Apparently, the 3 was a misprint, or there was some dispute between Scott Bazar and Jeff D., and Volume 2 was never published. The story varies depending on who you're talking to. So there is no Volume 2, so don't look for it. There's a Volume 1 and a Volume 3. There's also Opponents Unlimited and several other villains books as well. All of these are available on PDF at DriveThruRPG or in print on eBay and Amazon. In addition, there have been some new releases for the game. Villains Unleashed includes 24 new villains for your V&V campaign, more counters and adventure, the Triskelion Gambit, and some new rules and powers as well. Getting counters for V&V play is even easier. While many books do include them in the module, you can print out your own if you like. My own method for doing this is to use full sheet label paper and then apply them to heavy cardstock that you normally couldn't run through a printer because it's too heavy. You can cut them out, and with this method, you can get as many high-quality, heavy-duty counters as you might need cheaply and don't have to ruin or pull the counters from the modules. With all this going for it, one might wonder why Villains and Vigilantes wasn't more popular, and the answer to that is a bit complex. The final release for Fantasy Games Unlimited was called For the Greater Good and came out in 1987. Some might suggest that the system was too D&D-esque and that other systems like Champions simply outshined it. However, given the number of supplements and adventures published, a 3rd edition of the game could have addressed some of the game's weaknesses, but this never materialized and the game seemingly fell into the dustbin of history. However, Jeff D. and Jack Herman always wanted the rights to their game returned, but the owner of Fantasy Games Unlimited, Scott Bazar, held on to them even though his company, Fantasy Games Unlimited Incorporated, ceased to exist in 1991. Then, in 2004, with the emergent OSR movement, Bazar began releasing PDFs of old V&V material on DriveThruRPG until most of the back catalog was available. Then he began producing new material and releasing it on the website as well, and this is where a legal dispute between the creators and the publishers began. Dee and Herman claiming that Bazaar lost the rights to V&V when Fantasy Games Unlimited ceased to exist in 1991. And this went on for years. Then in 2013, the U.S. District Court of Arizona found that Dee and Herman owned all copyrights to V&V. There were further appeals and disputes, but ultimately Dee and Herman prevailed. There is now a third edition of the game, The Mighty Protectors, published through Monkey House Games, Dee and Herman's own game company. As for me, I have quite a bit of nostalgia for this old comic book RPG and an awful lot of the supplements and adventures. The game is so easy to get a hold of. The Fantasy Games Unlimited website still has quite a few downloads available for free, and the unsold backstock of the original publications are still available for order. Monkey House Games also has quite a few downloads and things available for the second edition of the game as well, and both old and new supplements can be purchased at Drive-Thru RPG. None of it very expensive. The 2.1 version of the classic rules with a few tweaks and additions is available on Lulu print on demand for only $14. That's not counting eBay and Amazon, which also have a vast library of backstock available, so getting into this superhero OSR is amazingly easy and inexpensive. Links for all is in the description below. As one might expect, the artwork in the original rules set in the included module Crisis at Crusader Citadel is done by Jeff D. As you can see by these pieces here, it's really quite good and certainly inspiring for play, and I consider it some of D's best and most excited published work. So, let's go ahead and take a look at how this OSR rates on my D20 evaluation scale for presentation, style, and value. The rules are relatively concise, though there are quite a few places where the newbie can stumble with some of the rules' complexities. However, I will credit the authors for providing great examples when needed. The example of play in the back with the hero Nomad versus the villains Mammoth and Heater Jenkins is both instructional and entertaining to read, and will surely clear up any confusion in the rules the new player might have. The rules come in a scant 47 pages long, but the type is small and quite a bit of information is stuffed into these pages. Unfortunately, there is no index, which means sometimes finding a specific rule can be difficult. Thus, I'm going to give V&V a 13 rating here. For style, the game has that in spades. In fact, I would say the game's style is its primary appeal and why so many people have enjoyed it over the years and still do. Jeff D's dynamic art style and the fast-paced nature of the game, along with easy-to-understand rules, makes for an enjoyable game experience. It manages to avoid overcodification and allows for players and DMs to work things out between themselves to create unique and interesting characters. It avoids too much wargame-like precision and plays it fast and loose, which is one of the primary things appealing about OSR play to begin with. So from that perspective, V&V earns a solid 18. Lastly, let's look at value. And I'm going to give you this rating based on the boxed set. The game originally came with a set of polyhedral dice, the rules booklet, the excellent starting adventure Crisis at Crusader Citadel, and a GM screen. The module includes counters for all the villains, vehicles, bystanders, and even blanks for your group of heroes. It is literally a complete role-playing game in a box. The starting adventure not only provides for several sessions of play, but plants the seeds for an ongoing campaign with a roster of superhero allies, a massive roster of unique and excellent villains, and a fully detailed superhero headquarters. Really, what more could you ask for? I have to give the box set from Villains and Vigilantes a natural 20. Putting all of that together, Villains and Vigilantes' overall rating is a 17. Very good. And that about wraps up another RPG Retro Review. Thank you so much for watching. With the recent release of Infinity War Endgame, I really felt a comic book RPG review was appropriate, especially one that fits the old school mold as well as Villains and Vigilantes does. I have my Thieves World review coming up, as well as my evaluation of the Frog Gods Games supplement City of Brass. Please like, subscribe, and consider supporting the channel on Patreon. As always, my friends, may your D20 roll true and game on.